start recording. There we go. We are on. So thank you, Steve. So this is October 30th, the Budget Committee meeting, the first night of presentations. This is going to be by the schools. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And then we're going to do a roll call. Izzy, you want to start?
Israel Carey.
Joe Alexander.
Olivia Welch-Ernall.
Laura Stevens.
Mark Bernard, Village Water Precinct.
Peter Grigorokakis.
Jared Talbot, School Board Rep.
Elizabeth DeBrule.
Samantha Kearns.
Joshua Douglas, Select Board Representative.
Brian Measer.
Doug Pounds.
Rich Durrell. James Piercy.
Allison DeCesare.
So Samantha and I are going to move because the school board is doing a presentation back here and we wouldn't be able to see it. So I will invite them up. We're not going to do any other business. We're going to go straight into presentation. So I will invite the school board reps to come up, introduce themselves, and begin their presentation. We're going to go move.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'll start with an introduction. I'm Brian Balke. I'm the very proud superintendent of schools, and I'm joined today by Doug Totten, who is our business administrator. I think you had Doug at your meeting on Tuesday evening. So if I haven't had the chance to meet some new members, welcome to the Budget Committee, and we're very pleased to be presenting the school budget this evening. So we'll go ahead and get started. So everyone at home who might be watching, all of our budget materials are on the SAU 19 website. So everything that you're going to see on the screen this evening, you can see all of those materials. I also wanted to start that I understand that last evening an email was supposed to go out to the Budget Committee that had all of these documents, and I'm not really sure why, but it sounds like it didn't go out. So I think Derek assured us that we'll get that out to you first thing tomorrow morning, and we apologize that that didn't go out.
It sounds like it got stuck in a spam thing and kicked back. So they're going to get it to us tonight or tomorrow or
Yeah, I guess
ASAP.
it might have had something to do with there were too many attachments, so if we have to send them like one at a time, we'll apologize in advance, but it might have to be something like that because it might have been too large of a file. But I would also share again, all of our budget materials are on the SAU website, so you're welcome to go and take a look at that. So this evening, Doug, have you provided an overview of any, so for paper, all they have is a copy of the budget with actuals?
That is correct.
Okay. So we will provide you with additional information. So you'll get kind of a big packet that will have supplemental information, reports from the state, as well as all of the individual presentations that you're going to see this evening, as well as next Tuesday evening. So you're going to get copies of all of this. So I'll go ahead and get started. So Stephen, you're going to be my slide guy. So the budget timelines, Stephen, you can skip to the next slide, please. We start the budget process in July. So one more slide, please, Stephen. We start the process in July, and we present to the school board in October. So the school board has already had the opportunity to review the budget. They've made a number of reductions to the budget this year, so you'll hear about that as we go through. Next slide, please, Stephen. So we're going to start with the numbers. I like to start right out of the gate with what are the numbers that we're looking at. So our current budget, which is fiscal year 26, all funds, and I'll just give a little explanation for any new Budget Committee members. Those of you who've been on this for a while, I apologize for the redundancy. But our all funds, all budget, includes the general fund budget, as well as food service and our special revenue. So our current fiscal year, FY26, and I would share again, I think the Budget Committee is largely aware of this, the town and the school have different fiscal years. The school district runs on a July 1 through the end of June fiscal year, and the town's fiscal year is on the typical calendar schedule. So we have two different timelines. The FY27 proposed general fund budget is $56,213,215. The food service budget, this is what's called an enterprise fund. Our food service budget only spends what they take in. And that's just over 1.5 million. Our special revenue budget, which is our federal grants, is 1.3 million. Federal grants are a little volatile right now. That you might have heard that there is some funding reductions that have happened. At this point, we believe that our federal funds that we do get are intact. There's a couple of key grant programs that we get. One is IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. That's like the special ed grant that we get. We get Title I, which is for families that have financial needs. We get Title III, Title IV. There are some other federal title programs that we get, but we are anticipating about $1.3 million. This is a bit of an unknown, though, because at this point, we know for FY26 that our federal grants are already approved and the amounts are set, but next year, we're not really sure. So there could be some reductions. That would mean that our revenue budget would need to be slightly adjusted, but we'll get to that when we need to. So in total, the FY27 gross appropriation is $59,060,648. And the difference between FY26 and FY27 is $1.6 million. And we're going to get into what makes that up. Next slide, please, Stephen. So just looking at the general fund only, so this is the part of the budget that's raised by taxation. Our current fiscal year is FY26, which is $54,689,000, and that includes the $300,000 deposit that went into the capital reserve fund for facilities. The next item down, it says FY27 base. Just to orient all of you, when we use the word base, that means default to us. So we have our default budget and we have our proposed budget, and the requirements for default budgets are outlined in RSA 40:13, I believe, and Mr. Totten will talk a little bit about that. The difference between the base and the proposed budget for FY27 is $836,922. From a percentage perspective, from FY26 current year to FY27 default is an increase of 1.26%, and the difference between current FY26 and FY27 requested is 2.79%. Now, I do want to share, if I was coming in with a budget that was less than 3%, I would feel really pretty good about that. But I do want to point out to the Budget Committee, this does not include increases in teacher salaries. So we are currently negotiating a new contract with our Goffstown Education Association, and that amount will be contained in a separate warrant article altogether. So although 2.79% is not maybe as high as it certainly could be, I do want to just remind you that does not include raises for teachers. That will be in a separate warrant article, assuming that our negotiations are successful. Next slide, please, Stephen. So when we think about the budget vision for FY27, the first thing that I need everyone to understand is the way that we built the budget this year was entirely predicated on having a teacher contract. So when we have a teacher contract, that's a year that we come in and we try as hard as we can to control costs, to keep the numbers down, and to make sure that we're presenting as palatable a budget as we can, knowing that our teacher contract is of the utmost importance to us. So the teacher contract dominates the vision for the FY27 budget. The next thing I would share with you is under staffing, this budget contains no new positions. There are no new requested positions contained in this budget at all. So as we have done in the past, there may be some repurposing. We sometimes move a position from one school to another, from one program to another as our needs change, but there are no new positions contained in the budget. The next piece I would share is technology and facilities. You will see throughout this budget, there are increases in technology and facilities. So I would share with the Budget Committee that what you're seeing here for the FY27 budget with respect to both facilities and IT is a multi-year approach to increasing the funding needs of these programs. So I talked to you about this last year. I will talk to you about it again next year. This is a multi-year approach, recognizing that some of these IT programs and equipment is so costly that we want to spread it over multiple fiscal years. And we do that very purposely to try to maintain the tax rate as best we're able to. The next piece I would share is our core reading program is outdated, and there's a new RSA that went into effect during the 2023-2024 legislative year. It was House Bill 1015 that amended RSA 189:53, and requires us to have an evidence-based reading program. So this is a requirement that goes into effect on July 1 of '27. So we should be budgeting for a new core reading program during FY '27. We have not done so. The reason we didn't do so is a core reading program is in the $300,000 to $400,000 range, and we didn't want to put that on top of the budget that we're already presenting. So what we're doing, we have recommended to the school board that we are going to prioritize the purchasing of the new core reading program this current fiscal year. We are freezing some lines, we're looking at some savings that we can anticipate, and we're trying to get that project done this year, so we're not budgeting for it during FY '27. So, yeah.
Thank you. What is the deadline to have that in effect for school?
You have to have it, according to the statute, you have to have that program in effect by July 1 of
Oh, it is
'27.
the July, okay.
So it would be for the start of the next school year. And we do have a reading program, but it's older, it's outdated, and it doesn't have some of the requirements that the statute puts before us. So this is a project that we wanted to do anyhow. We knew that our reading program was getting kind of past its prime, and we've been looking at a core reading program for the last couple of years. I would share this will be the third core reading program that we've done, and every time we've done it with one-time money. So we did it with, some of you might remember the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, ARA. That was the original first way that we funded our first core reading program. So we've tried to do it a number of creative ways and try really hard not to come to the taxpayers asking to pay for a $400,000 program. So that's really the key pieces that we wanted to highlight for the vision of the FY '27 budget, but I would reemphasize, it's all about the teacher contract for us. We are nothing without our teachers. Our teachers are obviously our biggest collective bargaining group, and we need to make sure that we are competitive, that we have a good contract to be able to recruit and retain great staff here in Goffstown. And I'm sure the Budget Committee is largely aware that there is a massive teacher shortage in the state of New Hampshire and across the country right now. So the need to have a competitive contract to be able to recruit and retain those teachers has never been more important than it is right now. Next slide, please, Stephen. So we would acknowledge the significant inflationary pressures that we continue to see in our country. And we also look that we, again, staffing neutral was the priority this year. We did not come in with any new positions, looking to expand any programs with new personnel or new staffing. Next slide, Stephen. So on the IT end of things, and if there are IT questions, the gentleman driving the PowerPoint over there is the IT director, and he would be happy to talk more about this. But we're really looking at three things: sustainability, stability, and security. So from an IT perspective, we're looking at not only teaching and learning, we're looking at all of the programs, the productivity tools that we use, the communication tools, all of it together, impacting teaching and learning, our networks, all of that. And what we have continued to see is we have really done a lot with grants. We've done a lot with donated equipment. We've done a lot with hand-me-downs. And some of our equipment is just really old. So what you'll see in this budget is throughout the budget, across all the schools, the district line in the schools, there are increases to IT lines throughout the entire budget. Next slide, please. The same is true on the facilities end of things. So as I always say, I would share with you that the Goffstown schools are the most valuable asset that the taxpayers of Goffstown own. And we take it very seriously that we need to maintain our buildings and we need to take good care of our buildings so that they'll be available for our community for generations to come. But on the facilities end of things, just like you're likely seeing at home, everything costs more. So if we have a vendor come out and they do a repair or replace a piece of equipment, everything costs more than it used to. So we're continuing to see that, everything from custodial cleaning supplies through equipment that we might purchase to vendors that we use to come in and do preventative maintenance. We're seeing that everything on the facilities end of things is costing more. All the trades are harder to find, the rates have gone up, we're just seeing, and you'll see this throughout, again, across the district lines as well as all the individual school lines, our facilities budget has gone up across the board. Next slide, Stephen. So what does our enrollment look like? In many ways, you've likely heard that there's an overall trend of reduced students in the state of New Hampshire, which is true and accurate, but we've kind of bucked that trend here in Goffstown. So if you look at our historical enrollment from 2020 to 2025, we're basically flat. So we have, it's been stable enrollment. Sometimes the numbers move. Sometimes we see a little bit of a blip or a bubble that might come through for one particular year. But overall, our enrollment has been stable. If you go to the next slide, Stephen, you can see a visual representation of this. So the top slide shows the decline in student enrollment at the state level, and you can see Goffstown is really maintaining pretty flat. I would also share that in that, maybe just prior to that was when we had lost Dunbarton. So we had a little bit of a dip after losing Dunbarton, but overall, the numbers have essentially stabilized. Next slide, please. One of the big drivers of our budget that you'll see, even though in total our special education lines are down throughout this budget, our special education needs continues to be one of the big drivers of our school district budget. And our population in total is 21% of our population have an individualized education plan where students receive individual supports and individualized programming. So that's a big piece of our needs. Next slide. This highlights our free and reduced number of students. And if I just point you to the far right-hand column, you'll see that all of our schools, except for Mountain View, have gone down in the number of students that are eligible for free and reduced lunch. So Bartlett is our highest free and reduced needs school, which is at 24.29%. And compare and contrast that to Maple, which is at 10.33%. Mountain View is at 14%, and Goffstown High School is at 10.47%. So we know that many of the families that might be eligible for free or reduced meals don't apply, but these are our current numbers. And I would also share with the Budget Committee, these numbers impact funding. So when we get into state funding for adequacy, if a student qualifies for free and reduced lunch, we get a little extra money. So we always want the numbers to be as accurate as we can be, and it's always a challenge to try to get some families to apply for free and reduced lunch, even though our wonderful food service director, who's sitting back behind me and you'll hear from a little later, does everything she can to make it as easy and family-friendly as that process can be. Next slide, Stephen. So now we start to get into some of the contributing factors. So I'm going to do my very best. Some of you who've been on the Budget Committee for a while, or if you've paid attention to this process, I sometimes have a tendency to get into a little bit of a heated dialogue about school funding. I'm going to do my very best not to do this year. I'm trying to, this is a new goal of mine. I'm trying to accept the things I cannot change, and I'm going to do my best not to complain too much about funding of public education, but I can make no promises. So this particular slide is significant. This is a state report that's generated every year, and this looks at the equalized evaluation per pupil. Now, the reason I share this with you is it's important to understand in the state of New Hampshire, behind every school-age kid, the average is over $2 million of property value behind that student. So that's the state average. In Goffstown, our average is $1,314,000. So you can see we're $700,000 below the state average per pupil in the amount of property wealth behind each student. In New Boston, same story, even slightly lower, $1,275,000. And Mr. Totten included Manchester just to give you a perspective that the city of Manchester has a higher equalized property evaluation than both Goffstown and New Boston. And if you look at the state report, we are one of the lowest communities in terms of wealth, the value of the land behind each student. Some of that is because we have a lot of kids. Some of that's because we don't have a very good commercial tax base. So when you look at the value of the land in Goffstown, you're primarily looking at residential taxpayers carrying the majority of that burden, where a lot of other communities have more industrial, more commercial tax base. So those are the big drivers in Goffstown. Next slide, Stephen. So the general fund revenue, so what you'll see here is this is a slide that captures where we get our revenue sources from. And at the top, the number I would highlight to you is local property tax pays for about 68% of the cost of education in the community of Goffstown. That has increased, unfortunately, that percentage over the years. The state revenue at this point is only 15.5%. So we're going to get into all of these in a lot more detail. Mr. Totten's going to talk about the revenues, but we just want to continue to show and tell the story. 70% of the cost of your local public schools is coming from local property taxes. Next slide, Stephen. So what's the 10-year change been? So when we look at adequacy, and we compare it from fiscal year 2015 to fiscal year 2024, you can see that it only changed by 1.72%. So the amount of money that we received over the course of a decade, the percentage of change per year was well below the rate of inflation. So unfortunately, when adequacy doesn't keep up with the costs, that's why a larger and larger percentage is coming out of local property taxes. And this is the part that I'm trying to get better about, because unfortunately, this is an old problem in the state of New Hampshire. Decades. So the original Claremont lawsuits were back in the early 90s. That's how far back this goes. And of course, if you're paying attention to the news, you just saw yesterday that the state reimbursed $2 million in legal fees to the Conval lawsuit. So the latest one, which is the Conval suit, going to the state Supreme Court, and we'll see what happens. Maybe something will change, maybe it won't. So in terms of SWEPT, which is the statewide education property tax, this is a tax that the state levies on communities. It's raised locally, it's retained locally, but it is considered state revenue. So you can see SWEPT has changed less than 0.5%, whereas our local taxes have gone up around 4.73% over the course of that decade. Next slide.
Do you know what the rate of inflation is over that same decade? Do you
I don't.
calculate that?
I'm sure Mr. Totten would be happy to.
I could look into it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And certainly it wouldn't have been, over the course of that decade, it would have, from 2015 to 2019, it would have looked different than 19 to 24.
Right.
So pre-COVID, inflation was nothing like it was during COVID or after. But again, we've told this story a lot of different ways and a lot of different times. It's just unfortunate that when everything tends to go up in cost, when your corresponding revenues don't increase at the same amount that your budgets increase, you end up creating that deficit. And that's unfortunately what continues to happen in the state of New Hampshire.
I would just be curious to know if that local tax rate is going up the same rate as inflation, faster than inflation, slower than inflation, where it falls relative to that.
Yeah, it's a good question. We'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and maybe Derek would know something about that too. So I think that might be something that Derek could maybe help with. So our goal is always to have a competitive cost per pupil, but this is something that I'm going to give a little bit of a cautionary statement on. So what you're going to hear in this presentation is that the community of Goffstown has the lowest K-12 cost in the entire state. So for all school districts that have kindergarten through high school, we are the lowest cost per pupil of all K-12 systems in the state of New Hampshire. So if you're a fiscal conservative, you should love that. If you're somebody who thinks that we should be spending more money on schools, you probably don't love that. And I would share that increasingly I'm less and less and less proud of how little we spend on our public schools. So unfortunately, when the burden, 70% of the burden falls on the local property taxpayers, it is just a really dysfunctional system. Everyone pays a lot on your property tax. Of course, none of us are paying a sales tax or an income tax in New Hampshire, but unfortunately, the burden on property taxes is really significant. And I would never sit before you and not recognize the impact that taxpayers are carrying the burden on and how much of a challenge it is, particularly for people on fixed incomes. We know, we recognize it, and I would say the fundamental way that we pay for our schools is kind of broken in this state. So it's unfortunate that this system falls all on local property taxpayers, even though we have the lowest K-12 cost in the state. So, yeah, so just in general, I already covered that. Next slide, Stephen. So when we talk about cost per pupil, this is a little different on the school end of things than it is on the municipal end of things. So in the state of New Hampshire, the Department of Education publishes a per pupil cost report every year, and the way that the Department of Ed does this is they remove two costs from the expenditures of a school district. They remove the cost of transportation, and they remove the cost of bonds. So if you're paying a bond on a new building like Bedford High School, that is removed from the per pupil cost. And if you're, say, a community like Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, that has a low number of kids and a huge geographical area to cover, they might spend so much more on transportation than another community like Rochester that might have a lot of kids that walk to local neighborhood schools. So bonds and transportation costs are removed. That's the state's model, it's not us, we just use their data. But what does the data tell us? So you can see here, over 10 years, the cost per pupil for the state of New Hampshire in 2015 was $14,375. In Goffstown, it was $12,377. So the same thing is true in current years. So in 2024, which was the last year that the data was published by the Department of Ed, the state average per pupil cost was $21,545. In Goffstown, it's $17,079. We are quite a bit below the state average tuition cost. And you can see here, elementary, middle, high school, all the same story, well below. You don't get to be the lowest K-12 cost without being way below in all those areas. Next slide, Stephen. So a little more detail. The state actually breaks it out between elementary, middle, and high school, and you can see where we fall. So for the elementary per pupil cost, we're the 18th lowest out of 154 school districts, and we're just over $3,400 less per pupil than the rest of the state, than the state average. At Mountain View Middle School, we are the lowest cost out of 62 districts that have middle schools, and we're almost $5,000 below the state average. And at Goffstown High School, we're the third lowest cost out of 72 high schools, which is about $4,400 less than the state average. And overall, the Goffstown School District is the lowest combined K-12 cost in the state. Next slide. So we wanted to give a couple of comparable towns. I think, I don't know if this came as a question from the Budget Committee.
It did, yep.
Okay, it did. So we wanted to pull a couple of comparable districts. So it's not super easy and clean to find a town that lines up really closely with Goffstown, but Milford, Londonderry, and Merrimack are kind of in the ballpark. You can see that the population of Milford is a little less than Goffstown. Londonderry's a little higher, Merrimack's a little higher. When we add in our New Boston kids and our New Boston population, both towns together, we're about 24,000, almost 25,000 residents. But you can see, again, lowest cost to highest cost, Goffstown, is ranked way at the lower end of things.
So the reason it's ranked second here, and we were talking about first before, because before we were looking at districts who had elementary, middle, and high school costs. And when I did this ranking, I just wanted to include everybody in there. So Auburn only has elementary costs, so they are the one district that's paying for elementary costs that is below us. So that way we got to kind of include every single town that reported. But if you looked at schools that have to support all three, and sometimes your high school or your middle school can be a little bit more expensive than your elementary schools at times, we are the lowest.
Despite those low per pupil costs, as you'll hear this evening, we continue to perform really well in the Goffstown School District. So we feel strongly that the return on investment, we're spending the lowest per pupil cost, and we have very good student outcomes. Next slide, please, Stephen.
So to get back to the inflation question, one thing that we're going to be doing, which I mentioned before, is one of the reports we have to post is a 10-year average. So kind of looking at our template for that, the inflation on average was 2.9%. And lower than that a little bit after.
And Doug, that report is a new statutory requirement for us, so we will be doing that this year. But they specifically, it was the Consumer Price Index, was it Northeast?
Northeast.
So there,
Yeah.
it was a.
Zeroed in a little bit more on our part of the country.
Okay.
In terms of the default budget calculation, so the statute is RSA 4013, and the short version is all one-time expenditures are removed from the default. So typically, it includes your budget is your current school year budget minus any one-time expenditures, plus and minus any contractual obligations. So, for example, you'll hear us talk about that we have increases in propane and electricity. We have taken the approach, it might be slightly different than the town, we treat that as new spending. There are different school districts that have different schools of thought on that. There are school districts that believe that anything you spend on energy, whether it's heating your buildings or electricity, that's considered default. We treat it a little differently. If there are increases in that spending, we call it out as new spending.
Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question regarding non-union salary increases that are like non-contractual. Why are those being included in the default budget?
Why are the salaries included?
Salary increases that are non-union.
The salary increases for those people, so we do have, we call it student supports, SSS, student support specialist. We have a couple of positions that are non-unionized. So it would include a career and technical person. We've got some IT folks that are in that. There's a separate line for their salary increases as the budget, as the salary pool. The pool is what we use to provide increases for the subsequent year.
Okay, and I'm also asking about administrative aid.
Same story. So you'll see in the budget that there's a pool for administrators. That amount is what's used to apply next year for raises.
But I guess I'm wondering why, so in the budget, there's the admin salary increases, which are non-union, non-contractual, are being included in the default budget.
They are because the prior year, the raises were approved, and then because they're approved, we distribute them to the individuals. So the raises were approved by the legislative body, and then we distribute them to the appropriate individuals that receive those raises. Therefore, that's why they're default, because the prior year they were approved by the legislative body.
Oh, so the prior year they were in the salary pool.
Correct.
And then
we
when they get
distribute-
enacted, they get moved into their,
So it's like a line item
It's a very,
transfer that goes into
interesting
them.
way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, very interesting.
Can you
okay.
tell me which lines particularly?
We're going to get there tonight, Joe.
Okay, I
So
would like to know that.
Yeah, so we'll call it out when we get to
Thank
those
you.
lines.
Very interesting.
And by the way, this is how we've done it for 3 decades. So this is nothing new. We're not
And that's
doing,
inclusive of any line item transfers that has happened to any budget for any municipality to follow the Roberts rules.
okay, so keep going.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. So what budget lines demonstrate significant changes to the default budget? So here's where you start to see where the budgetary increases are. So the first thing you'll see is voter-approved salary and benefit increases, as well as overall health insurance, which is $878,000. We have an increase of $72,600 for regular education transportation. We have a decrease in special education, and we have an increase at the SAU level. So we're going to go through all of these throughout the presentation tonight to give you an overview of what the increases are, health insurance being one of the biggest ones. Next slide. So again, I would share that almost 80% of the school district budget is salary and benefits. So this is 78% of the entire budget goes to salary and benefits for our employees. So by the time you take 78% of the budget off, and then you include things like energy costs, you'll see that there's actually very little in the budget that would be discretionary type spending. The majority of our budget, 78%, is all for salary and benefits. Next slide. As I already stated, negotiations are underway for our GEA contract, and at this point, health insurance, as you all know, continues to be a very volatile benefit. And you're probably aware, you've probably heard stories this year about school districts being given a large assessment by school care. You might have heard the Concord School District, the Londonderry School District. Londonderry had a $2 million, I think, bill presented to them. Those districts are all part of, they get their health benefits from school care. We don't use school care, we use Health Trust. And the difference between school care and Health Trust is school care is what's called an assessable risk pool, which means that if their reserves drop below a particular number, they go back to the people who are the members and increase the costs. Health Trust is a non-assessable risk pool, which means they don't come back and ask for you for an increase during that year. So it's two different models. But there's been a lot of volatility around health insurance for school districts. I just wanted to share that we're not in that, we don't get our insurance from school care. And just a couple of other pieces, there was a slight increase for the New Hampshire retirement system as well. Next slide.
That says decrease.
Yeah.
Decrease. It was a slight decrease.
Yeah. I've
Good news.
not sure I've actually ever heard of a decrease from the retirement system, so I think we'll take that one. We're going to call that a win. So here are the biggest drivers of the spending that you're going to see. And I want to talk a little bit about the first one. The first one is Manchester School of Technology tuition. So what you're going to see here is we included $250,000 in this budget due to increased costs associated with sending students to the Manchester School of Technology. Our students are able to access vocational programming, and that includes things like what you might think about traditional kind of vocational technical programs like plumbing, building trades, auto mechanics, but it also includes some newer type things. So it includes things like cosmetology, game design, there's all kinds of robotics kinds of things that are part of it now. So the overall, the types of programming that's offered has expanded. But what you'll see and what you're going to hear more about is that unfortunately, and again, I'm trying really hard not to be negative on this, but the funding that we receive from the state has continued to go down, and that's why we had to add another $250,000 into this budget. So we have not historically here at Goffstown High School restricted the number of students that are able to participate in vocational programming. We've made it open to everybody. We've offered that to any student who wants to take programming. We've allowed them to do that. Unfortunately, we used to pay 25% of the bill, and guess what? It's more. So you'll hear in the next couple of slides how high that amount has been. But what I shared with the school board when we presented this number to the school board is this is our best guess at what the increased cost is going to be. This does not include the school district restricting access to any of these programs to students. So this doesn't have me indicating that only a set number of students can go, maybe doing some kind of a criteria, having a lottery. This includes access for the current students who are taking these programs. If this money is not in the budget, I would likely have to consider not all students would be eligible to take these courses and programs. So my school of thought on this is really pretty simple. I think that we have to have a lot of different pathways for all kids. It's wrong to think that kids should graduate from high school and go to college. College is not for everybody. And by the way, if you go into the trades, you're probably going to make more money than somebody who might go to college and, saddle themselves with all kinds of debt. But so when we see the need for tradespeople in this state, the lack of tradespeople, I have not wanted to restrict how many kids we're going to be able to take programming at MST. The next
Jared?
thing,
Oh,
Brian,
Jared's got it.
yeah, just to hammer on that point for a little bit, I think we had 104 or 109 students that are currently in that trade for this year.
yep.
So that's kind of, the opportunity that we have for students that are going to Manchester School of Technology.
Yep, agreed. Couple other pieces, and you'll hear more about this as we go through. IT, we've got about 119,000. The next one is personnel, including GAP. GAP is our Goffstown Adult Program, and I'm going to stay on theme here of reductions in state revenue. So we have an adult program that we are historically have been able to get money from the state to be able to run. It's a program that we offer at night, so kids are able to take classes at night. Community members are able to take classes at night. They're able to do the HiSET, which is you might remember GED, the graduation equivalency. We offer all of those services to the community at night, and historically, the state has funded those, but guess what? The funding has dried up. So we're going to get into the actual cost of that a little more. And overall, phones, internet, dark fiber is up about 60,000. Next slide,
Hold on,
please.
hold on. Can we go back to the EMC municipal lease?
Yep.
I missed that one, if you explained that.
So the EMC municipal lease is the large program that the school district did 3 years ago, I think at this point. We've made 2 payments thus far. That included lighting, HVAC, a number of envelope, energy reduction types of programs, and it's a lease purchase. And so this, the amount is $220,000, and there's offsetting revenue that's part of this, or offsetting costs associated with reduced energy consumption. We also, in our first year, received grants and some of those types of things from Eversource to offset some of the costs, but that's what that is. So there are 17 more payments that we'll make. I would also share, so there are actually a couple of different municipal leases. Some of you that have been around for a while might remember there were 2 Honeywell projects that we did over the last 25 years as well that have focused on things like heating and cooling efficiencies, building envelope, lighting, some of those kinds of things.
So that 220,000 is part of the total amount, so the total amount is a little over 261,000. So this is the first year that we paid into that, but what was known was that there would be more energy rebates that we couldn't qualify for because we don't pay taxes, but the company that we worked with, EMC, could qualify for. So what they did was they took that amount of the extra rebates that we were expecting that we could qualify for, and they put that against the first payment. So that left the first payment being about that 40,000 for us, or 25,000 roughly for us. So knowing the first year there's going to be extra energy rebates, it was budgeted lower than the full amount. Now we're bringing it up to the full amount.
So since this is a contracted expense, is this in the default?
It is not in the default.
But isn't it a contracted expense?
It was not voted on by the taxpayers, so would not go in the default.
Even the 40,000?
The 40,000 is already in the default. Yes, this is the addition of 220. So once this gets voted on this year, then it would stay in the default for the remainder
Okay.
of the time.
So when we engaged in this lease purchase, there's a non-appropriation clause in that. That's how you have to do that.
Okay.
So because if we would have done it as a standalone warrant article that had funding associated with it, then it would have been default.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Peter, had a question?
Oh,
You
yeah.
already answered my question.
Then,
Laura?
yeah, thank you. For MST and GAP, I know you said GAP dried up, so I'm guessing that's completely gone. And I know we talked about this sort of at the end of budget season last year, or felt like the end, I don't know when it was. But how far ahead of time did we know that either money wasn't going to be there, it was going to decrease, or did they just take it away? Is there a contract or a law? Okay.
So unfortunately, we didn't have any notice.
Okay.
We didn't have any notice. So the MST tuition, last year, without any notice, we received a bill for $220,000 from the Manchester School of Technology because the percentage that the state paid per pupil went down. So there was no opportunity to know about it or to budget for it. We know about it now. I'm expecting a similar bill for this current year
Okay.
based on our current enrollments. So if I got a $220,000 bill last year, I'm going to get a $250,000 bill this year, I'm going to get another bill next year. So unless there's an increase in the amount of money that the state is paying for vocational tuition, we will continue to have increases in this particular area.
A quick,
So knowing that we were going to have another bill for our students from last year, this year we encumbered the money from the fund balance, because that was a legal way to encumber it, because we knew that that was going to happen. So that would have been, I think we encumbered about 240,000. That would have been an additional 240,000 that would have offset taxes if we didn't have to encumber it for MST.
okay, and so a quick follow-up. So there's no, I don't know what to call it, a law or a contract or anything protecting the school in any way from this happening? Just,
Unfortunately,
Okay.
I mean, so the only remedy, there are a number of different things where if local school districts wanted to take legal action against the state, they probably could. But
there's nothing currently that
there's
would-
nothing current.
Okay.
So at this
you.
point, unfortunately, we're not expecting any kind of an increase. And so the state budget, and Representative Alexander could speak to this better than me, when the last biennial budget was just done, there was no increases put in for CTE programming, and there was no increase put in for the adult ed programs. So unfortunately, and we've got, I think the next couple of slides goes through the MST info a little more.
Thank you.
Next slide, Steve.
Oh,
By the way,
I got one question pertaining to GAP. So my question is, when a student fails a class, and if there's no funding, if the funding's cut for GAP, why are the students forced to either take VLAX or GAP, and they can't take the class again if they have an open period?
Well, so that's a high school, the high school has never allowed that to happen. So when they do their presentation, that's something that I would let them talk a little more about. And there are different schools of thought. Different high schools do that different ways. But we've used the GAP program. So the GAP is also an enrichment for community members. So we're able to offer, right now we're offering bare bones only. We stripped everything down. We got rid of any kind of enhancement or I would say, kind of non-essential courses because the funding was cut so significantly. I think we've got a couple slides coming up. We used to get about 60 grand. And unfortunately, we're getting a little bit this year. There's a one-time grant that we're getting this year because the money was eliminated, but the following year, it goes away entirely. So we went from getting 60 grand to this current year, I think we're getting about 25, and we're anticipating next year to only get 1,000. So that's the story there.
by the way, everybody on this side of the room, neither Sam or I can see you, so if you have a question, like stick your hand up or give a shout out, because we won't call on you because we won't see you.
Be the mirror. Yeah.
Next slide. Okay, so now we continue with some of the new requests for spending. So you'll see here, Joe was asking about the pool for our IT staff. This is the salary pool that we would use for increases in their wages. The next thing that you'll see here is district co-curricular. This is $4,000. This is a new program that has been historically funded through grants. So this allows us to run a summer middle school theater program that historically we have done through grants. And again, same story on the grants. Some of those grants are drying up. So in order for us to continue to offer that program, we've included those in the budget. This one might be a little controversial, but the school board included $2,000 for the treasurer. The board did not include any stipends for themselves, but they felt that the work of the treasurer was significant. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of how much work the treasurer of a school district has to do, but there's a significant amount of oversight that is involved with that. There's a lot of time that's involved with that, and the school board felt it was appropriate to budget $2,000 for the treasurer.
So
You
this
also
is
have to
something,
have training. I mean, you can't just be like Joe Schmo walking in and being the treasurer, right? You have to have some like accounting background or,
we would want them to have an accounting background
Okay.
because they reconcile by the month and then by the year as well for us, which then goes into part of the audit as well. So this is something that truthfully I advocated for as well. I see that, you know, if you're part of a board, you know, you definitely want diversity on your board, and that's a great thing. But for me, like our treasurer, it's very important to me that they do have sound knowledge of math and accounting. And however we need to get them, whether it's an incentive or a small stipend or something like that, I want to have the biggest pool that we can have. We see that there are different towns in the states that are not making always great decisions. We don't want that to be Goffstown. I don't want that to be Goffstown. I want to surround myself with the most qualified people that I can. This is, you know, one way that we can possibly do that with the treasurer. The treasurer releases our final check on releasing any money from TD Bank. So they have to be the ones to release it. So that's multiple times per week that they have to kind of stop what they're doing and release that funds. And as I talked about, they also reconcile per the month as far as making sure that the money in TD Bank matches up with our e-finance system, as well as they work with the auditors at year end as well. So I know it might be a little controversial, but this was important for me also to get back on there.
And then lastly on this sheet, so when I talked about the GAP, which is again the adult program, we budgeted $45,722 for that to be able to continue those programs next year. And lastly on this sheet is a travel stipend for food service. Our food service director is driving quite a bit between buildings, and that was something that was not identified in the budget previously. Next slide. So this is what you'll see here. These are positions that were requested by the principals. So every year, principals come to the SAU and present new positions they'd like to consider as part of the budget development process. So this is the list that I received this year. Of this list, we are supporting 2 positions, and those 2 positions, one is a 6th grade math teacher, a 6th grade teacher at Mountain View, and the other is a math teacher. So both at Mountain View, we have a pretty large current 5th grade class size, and we need to add a 6th grade teacher next year, and also 1 additional math teacher based on our math sections. I would also share that if you're not aware, at Mountain View, we also, in addition to typical kind of grade level math, we also offer algebra, we offer geometry. Kids are able to take advanced math that I know when I was in high school that they didn't offer. So they only started to offer algebra to middle school kids really in New Hampshire in the last 20 years or so, and Goffstown's had a pretty robust program at Mountain View for a number of years. These other positions are important, but again, you can see the cost. So every teacher that we would budget for is about $100,000, salary and benefits all in. So every teaching position that I would add is another $100,000 to the budget. So you can quickly see that we didn't support these positions not because they're not needed, but because of just the overall impact on the budget. So these 2 positions, you'll see the column on the left that says SAU supported. Those are 2 positions that we have identified that we will support next year, and those will be repurposed positions. So I can't tell you exactly what those will be right now. I'm probably 85% sure that I know what they were or what they will be, but at this point, we always do this. We evaluate our positions at the end of the year. When our high school students enroll for courses, that's another chance for us to look at what our course requests are, and at one way or another, those 2 positions will be supported next year. And again, no new positions throughout this budget. So that's my last slide. Next slide, Stephen, we're going to hand it off to Doug.
So if there's a large 5th grade class, so you need a teacher to cover them in 6th grade, wouldn't there be an extra 5th grade teacher?
No, because we didn't increase the head count in 5th grade last year.
Okay.
So we could have done that, but we did not.
Okay.
So the current 5th grade classes are larger than we would like.
Okay.
In addition, we had students move in that we weren't anticipated. So 5th grade ended up being bigger than anticipated this year, and we're trying to provide some support to that for next year.
Okay. Olivia?
So with that class being larger than the classes before and after it, would that position have to move with that class as they move up a grade level? You know what I mean? Like when they go to 6th grade, would they go to 7th grade?
Yeah, so one of 2 things would happen. It's unlikely the position would move, because in 7th grade, our teams look a little different because
Right.
our New Boston students enter.
Okay.
And so depending on how large the New Boston class is, we likely already will be able to absorb that in 7th grade, but that would be something for us to determine next year. So we would evaluate, and if we needed to move a position to 7th grade the subsequent year, we would plan to do that.
As of right now, though, we are planning just a one-year position for that, kind of knowing kind of where the New Boston class is to it, and like Mr. Belke said, it gets absorbed by more teachers in 7th grade. So right now, it is the plan for 1 year.
Okay.
Brian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian, I have a question. You mentioned no new positions. So how is Scott Gross's new position being treated, and how is it funded?
Scott
Scott
Gross's
Gross's position
Scott
is
Gross's
an
new
SAU.
position was for this year, Brian, so that was an FY '26 position, and that was at the SAU office.
So we don't, the budget committee doesn't review the SAU budget because that's done at the, right? That's not done by voters.
According to the area agreement, the SAU budget split between Goffstown and New Boston. And so there is a legislative body that approves the SAU budget, and then the cost sharing goes to the individual districts through Goffstown and New Boston.
So we have a charge for it in this budget.
Yes.
But we don't actually get to,
It's part of the default because it's an
Right.
area agreement that's been approved by the.
so it's like the
voters.
contract for the New Boston students, in effect, right?
Yes.
It's like, this is the cost, and that's
Correct.
the end of the story. Okay.
What is the current 5th grade class size?
When we get into the middle
Okay.
school presentations, we have
It'll be
all
in
the
there.
class sizes by grade broken out, so if you wouldn't mind,
Yeah, I can wait.
when we get there, it's all part of the presentation. Any other
More
questions before
questions?
we continue?
I have one about the enrollment numbers. So I know when we lost Dunbarton, we ended up making up a lot of those numbers from building in New Boston. Last year, when you were here, there was a lot of talk about new housing developments and the strain that that was going to potentially put on our schools. Where does that stand now? Like, did those new housing, have they come online?
You're talking about the Goffstown?
In Goffstown, I'm
Oh,
talking about.
yeah, so they're coming online still. So for like the Bog Road development is not fully filled, but we have students from that. We actually have a chart that we could bring, Doug, that has all those developments listed on them, and I think what we believe the impact has been thus far. But yes, we've continued to see increases, but we're expecting more enrollment from that Bog Road project. And there are a number of other, I apologize, I don't have it with me, but we have a sheet that has the known developments and how many units there are. There are quite a few. We didn't budget for any increases here, but we would expect that we'll likely see more kids from those. New
So-
Boston's enrollment has gone down a little bit. So New Boston Central School, just a few years ago, was almost 600 kids, and we're now in below 500. So New Boston's number of kids has gone down. They used to be almost 20% of the population of New Boston were school-age kids, and that's ticked downwardly a little bit, thankfully.
So our numbers remaining flat is due to new development in Goffstown.
It's also, so a couple other things that I would share is we're seeing existing home sales. So you've got new developments, but existing home sales. Somebody sells their house, maybe they didn't have kids in the school system, a family with children buy it, so now we have some kids that we pick up in the school system. The other thing that we've continued to see since COVID is more multi-generational families. So we're seeing adults with children moving in with their parents, you know, kind of like grandparents, multi-generational. We're seeing a lot of that, a lot of that.
So I think going back to your first point, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Goffstown schools are thought of as positive, because if not, then people wouldn't have moved in with their kids, because they do have choices on where they go, and they are tending to move into the districts where school is thought of as positive. So it's a good thing, you know. It comes from a good thing from strong teachers, strong administration, strong schools.
Yeah, great schools equals property value. So there's kind of no and ifs or buts about it. If you're going to sell your house, you want to have a house that it's in a community that people want to move to. There are people that, you know, want to be part of this community, and great schools equals property value.
So there's no, hold on a second, Joe, so there's no population decline on the horizon?
I don't think so. And actually, I would kind of love that. I actually wish the population would go down. When you hear Mr. Demers talk about Maple Ave is busting at the seams. So enrollment declining would be a most welcome thing here. And by the way, it's probably the only way in the community of Goffstown that we'll ever see full-day kindergarten. The way that most towns that have, by the way, everybody in the state has full-day kindergarten except for 3 communities. Goffstown, New Boston, and Londonderry. Londonderry has been trying for, I think, 3 years now. They've tried to get a warrant article passed to do full-day K. Goffstown, I can tell you with all confidence, Goffstown will be the last community in this state without full-day kindergarten. It will take a legislative mandate. So right now, the short version is we would be short at least 6 classrooms if we wanted to do full-day kindergarten. 6 physical spaces and the corresponding teachers that go with it. So do the rough math. If I add 6 classrooms, by the way, I don't know where I'm gonna get 6 classrooms from, so it's probably another modular classroom, portable classroom type situation. Increase 6 teachers, there's 600 grand. So the likelihood that Goffstown is going to be able to do full-day kindergarten is very low. And it's very unfortunate because this is something that's good for kids. Families want it, but unfortunately for Goffstown, I just don't see it on the horizon. I wish I could have a little more hope and optimism on this, but unfortunately, I just don't.
Joe, you had a question?
Thank you. So 2 things. The first thing is, if we look at enrollment, I mean, we're talking about enrollment staying steady, but I would say it's the lowest it's been in 5 years. I'd be curious to see 5-year, like 10-year look back, how many students are actually attending, because if the trend stays the way I think it is, enrollment's going down, it's not staying steady. So we have to look at that. With student enrollment going down, the budget going up 4%, or 2.79% plus a teacher's contract, doesn't make sense to me. If we're losing students, why is the budget going up so much? Second thing is, I asked Doug last meeting for data on unspent budget lines at the end of the section year. I'd just like to see those, because it was like $3 million. So like the actuals at the end of the 2025 budget.
Yep, that was part of the email that got stuck in
perfect.
spam.
All right,
So
I'll take a look at that. Thank
you'll
you.
see, I got about $2.4 million of it from some big chunks. The first big chunk was health insurance, $800,000. So again, last year, we didn't know the guaranteed maximum rate going into it, and the projected rate, what we had, was higher than what the insurance came in at. So that was a large chunk of that $800,000. The next big chunk was teacher salaries, about $514,000. A lot of times when you hire teachers, they come in at a lower price than the teacher that is either retiring or moving to a different district. Then we had paraprofessional salaries. We ended the year with 9 positions down. But even the paraprofessionals that were there the whole year doesn't mean that they were all there the whole year, because they would have been, some of them would have been hired throughout the year as well. We had FICA, so taxes. So if you have less salaries, you're going to have less FICA, because it's going to correspond to the actual salaries. Teacher retirement, same type of thing. And then we were also lower in administrative assistant salaries, retirement stipends, people who were looking to retire and then didn't retire, $132,000 there, and custodial salaries being short-staffed at different times in the buildings. So that is part of that email as well.
Okay, so the question, if I could follow up.
Yeah,
That's
go
great.
ahead.
The question I have regarding the $500,000 for teachers' salaries, if we're bringing in teachers at lower salaries, lower steps, because maybe they don't have as much experience as the ones that retired, why aren't we reducing the default budget for the next year, anticipating that we're going to be spending less on these teachers?
We don't know what teachers we're going to bring in.
Well, we know they signed a contract, so we know like if they're going to be around, and we know those teachers that were hired at a lower step are going to be paid significantly less than the teachers that retired at a higher income. So I guess I'm wondering,
Yeah.
what you're saying is there's a $500,000 difference there, that there's teachers coming in at a lower salary, and we're just keeping that held over.
I don't know if it's always
$500,000.
$500,000.
Yeah,
That's what it
it's-
was for last year.
Yeah, but
So-
it's just a point I'd like to make, is like we should be adjusting the default based on the actual positions and the salaries of the teachers that are being paid, not the ones that retired last year.
So if I can share, part of the logic with this is when we get into the district lines, you're going to see that the substitute line is really underfunded. It's purposely underfunded, and one of the reasons is because we anticipate teacher turnover money. We don't always know what it's going to be, and it varies some years. We've actually had pretty good luck hiring experienced teachers over the last few years, so we're not always just stuck hiring people right out of college. We're actually sometimes hiring people that have some experience. But that's part of the reason, Joe, is when you see, and I think the Budget Committee is aware of the substitute line that I'm talking about, it's under budgeted, and that's one of the reasons. Is because we anticipate, we don't know what that teacher turnover money will be, but we anticipate it will be something.
Well, the state almost had the governor vetoed the bill, but basically the state would have mandated that you would have gone to like the default of what the salary was the previous year. So that's why I was wondering what the kind of difference is between like the experienced teachers we have this year compared to the ones that retired, and if we're paying them less, why we're not reducing the default budget at the same time. So that's an issue that I have with the budget.
Olivia, do you have a question on the same topic, or are you going to switch?
Yeah, it
Okay.
was kind of piggybacking off of
And
Joe.
then you,
So
Peter.
as far as the slight change that Joe referred to in the student count, would that be attributed to the larger fifth grade class? Where
So-
that was kind of like a bubble, so it kind of like returned back to the more even keel?
Well, so what we'll see is the enrollment is going to go up and down a little bit.
Right.
So Joe may be correct in that if you have a school that maybe loses 20 students, well, if they're all in the same grade level, guess what? I could probably eliminate one teacher. But if they're spread across multiple grade levels, even though you lose 20 students, you can't correspondingly cut a teacher. So this is one of the challenges of public education is if you lose some kids, you may not have the ability to reduce a whole section. So we watch all of those. We watch all of those numbers, all of those sections across all of our schools, and sometimes it works out that way, but usually it doesn't. Usually the kids are spread across multiple grade levels, and when you have certain fixed costs, it's hard to make corresponding decreases based on slight enrollment adjustments.
Peter?
So relative to the question that we were asking before, when we're talking about that $500,000 difference, and those new hires, can you just clarify, are we talking about, we're budgeting for it based off of last year, but we haven't actually hired those new ones yet? Like, we don't,
So
I
as
just
of
wanna
right now,
clarify,
so
do we
when-
not
let
know
me
that
just
amount
explain
yet?
it. When we're budgeting for next year, we're anticipating all of our current staff to return.
okay.
We're expecting them to return. And then if that doesn't happen, we then look at, do we end up hiring people that have similar costs? Are they a little less expensive? What does that end up being? Generally, it tends to be slightly lower. And that's partly how we fund that substitute line.
Gotcha. Can I ask one, or really just a statement on top of that? As someone who has kids in the school district, I can speak from my own personal experience that it comes at a cost when you're hiring someone with less experience. It frankly does, right? We are training that person. They're probably wonderful and they probably love teaching, but the reality is there's a reason they get paid less. They don't have the same level of experience. They're not offering the same thing to my student because they only get to get that teacher for 1 year, right? My child goes into that classroom and I'm sure they are wonderful, but the reality is if we can hire that more experienced teacher, we're doing better as a district as well. So I don't think we should be undercutting that.
So I have a question too. I just want to clarify a point that was made earlier, I think. The default numbers are based on real salaries, right? You're basically doing zero-based budgeting. You're looking at, this is what we are paying this year in your calculations. You're not taking a old budgeted number and saying, well, we're going to add whatever percentage and move it on.
So it's based on the contracted salaries. So right now, we have a multi-year contract with the support staff, so there's a known rate for next year that people would bump to. So everyone who is a support staff will be making more next year, so it's based on that. And that's why we don't see the teacher salaries in here. The teacher salaries are frozen in here because there is no contract for next year. So the bump up in the teacher salaries would be part of the warrant article.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is why does Joe think that the default number for teacher salaries went up in this scenario?
It
I haven't
didn't.
looked at the numbers.
It didn't.
But it didn't.
It didn't.
Is that, I mean, are we clear on that?
So the only piece that went up is health insurance. So if we are unsuccessful with a contract, or if the contract didn't pass by the voters, the current contract still has health insurance. The health insurance increases for next year are included in the FY27 budget.
Okay,
But salary increases are not.
so that's.
Yeah,
so-
and I
so-
wasn't making the point that it was for next year. I was saying from last year, they budgeted an increase, but they ended up using all the salary because they may have hired somebody at a smaller step in the contract.
Okay.
Like as they brought somebody in. and they
Okay,
would've
so I
been
want
a
to make
different
sure that
step.
that did get accounted for, that the scenario you're talking about where
Was
someone
last year.
was hired at a lower level than it was adjusted in the default budget.
Oh, I'm sorry.
now, yes.
I get it. What, is that what you were asking?
No.
So if,
He was talking about fund, I don't want to speak for you, sorry.
I think his point is that, so they get hired at a lower level, and then you've got 500, like, where's this 500,000 that's floating around
Do you reduce the default next year?
by 500,000?
we reduce it based on the people that we hire. So right now, when we were developing the FY26 budget, if we included a particular staff member, and then that staff member retires or leaves or whatever, we replace that person, that now becomes the amount that we would include in next
Right.
year's default budget. So if, if
So it's
that's what you were
calculated on real
asking,
people.
it's real people, real known people, although, as Doug shared, we had vacancies last year that we couldn't fill.
So that's the 500,000,
That was
is
the
the
big driver,
vacancies that
was I
hadn't
had
been filled at that
paraprofessional
time.
positions, we still have them, that we have not been able to fill.
Okay,
That's been a big factor of our underspend of the budget. And remember, the fund balance is also, it's the underspend of the budget, but it's also the overcollection of revenue. So we tend to budget our revenue projections fairly conservatively, and we like to be surprised that we get more revenue than we anticipate.
okay. So, does that make, do you
Yeah,
have any more
addresses it.
questions? Okay,
good.
I think I get it. You think you get it?
I'm good right now.
Okay, all right.
We'll be here all
Are there,
week.
are there more questions?
I was gonna say, I'm switching gears, so I don't wanna.
Okay, yeah, I
I
think
don't
we can
wanna let
switch gears
anybody-
unless anybody else has a question.
Okay. My first question for you is, do we have the ability to split, and maybe this is more for Jared, split the food service fund off, similar to what we did to the sewer enterprise fund last year for the town?
The food service budget is already an enterprise fund. So no money.
Right, but for the
She means
town,
on the
we didn't
warrant article.
include it into the main warrant article of the main budget for the town. The town's budget was
You
20.
can do that. You can split off the food services and have it as a separate warrant article. Goffstown has never historically done that, but you are able to do that if you want.
Yeah, and I guess I'm wondering if, we did that for the sewer, and it just makes it, we did that for the sewer for the town. I don't know what everybody's feeling is on that.
I think it's, well, I think it's an interesting idea. I think the thing with the sewer was that they had an enormous capital expense that was skewing the town budget. So if the food services doesn't have a big capital expense going on, I'm not sure, it's a wash. So,
It's a wash. They only spend what they take in.
Right.
And right now, for capital expenses, we are fortunate that the food service has a fund balance. A lot of districts grew a fund balance during COVID when everyone got free food and we were getting reimbursed a lot more. So we've held on to a decent fund balance. And so if we are buying something new, like we bought a new service line at the middle school because it was original to the building and it wasn't set up the way that it was beneficial for the staff, so we purchased that, but that came out of the fund balance too. So we wouldn't, at this point, there wouldn't be any, if we bought something new, it wouldn't skew the numbers because it would come out of the fund balance.
I guess I think people look at the big number that big $59 million number, and just like last year with the town, they looked at the big $27 million number, and then we moved 2 million of it into a different fund, thereby like changing that big number from 27 million to 25 million, and I think it.
But I don't think
it
that's what
looked
did
better.
it, Sam. I think what did it was that we moved a big part of the increase with the sewer, went with the sewer. So the thing that threw everybody off on the town side was you have a big increase. Well, it turns out $1 million of that big increase is related to the sewer department and isn't
Yeah.
raised through taxation and shouldn't really be considered with the rest of that increase, which is actual town expense raised by taxation.
Okay. My second question for you is, last year, I thought we purchased a learning program that was K through 8. This is going like all the way back to your first slide. Wasn't there something?
2 years ago, it was Math and U, which was our K to 5 math curriculum. 2 years ago.
Okay. It was like $24,000 last year, $29,000.
That's not gonna buy a new curriculum.
And then my last question for you is, and I might need Joe's help a little bit on this. There was a bill that allowed students to go to other schools, like other public schools?
So I think you're
Remember
talking
seeing
open
this in the
enrollment,
news?
so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
And in fact, full disclosure to the budget committee, we're required to create a line and put, Doug can talk about this a little bit, but we're required to put a line in that, a dollar at least, that would allow us to do the open enrollment. I would let Joe speak to that. I am expecting and anticipating there will be some form of open enrollment next year. So we have to budget, we're required to budget in one area for that, but there's no money in this budget to support open enrollment. There's a lot of unknowns about open enrollment. But depending on the details, I would share with you, I think Goffstown could be a community that benefits from open enrollment.
Right. I remember reading a little bit of this news article on this, and that it would create a revenue for Goffstown. But I was thinking in terms of our class sizes, and we have too many students.
So if I can just share,
Yeah.
my understanding, and Joe would have a lot more of the inside kind of thoughts on this, what open enrollment would require school districts to do, it would require the school board to set a policy of how many students you would have in different grade levels. And you would then evaluate what your enrollment is, and you would identify how many open seats you have. So once you identify how many open seats you have, it would then kind of be like on the open market that someone would see Goffstown has, 5 seats in 3rd grade and so many seats in whatever grades. They could then sign up, kind of like the college football portal where, players can transfer. That's what would happen. The devil's in the details, though. So it's my understanding the bill that wasn't successful last year, it's not entirely known how this would work. So let me just use an example. If a New Boston student is attending Goffstown High School, I know how much the town of New Boston is paying for that. That's dictated by the area agreement. If that same New Boston student went to Sauhegan High School, which spends about $4,000 or $5,000 more per pupil, my understanding was 80% of the cost would come from the sending school. I don't know where the rest of it comes from. We don't know. So if Goffstown High School is $6,000 or $7,000 less expensive than Sauhegan High School, who makes up the delta? I don't know. Special education, big unknown. Big unknown. So who provides special education services if a student who qualifies for special ed was part of the open enrollment? We're not really sure about that. But I'm not afraid of competition, and I think that we would have a lot of people that would want to come to Goffstown. So whatever happens with open enrollment, we're going to just watch and be ready for whatever it is. I do have some fears, but I think that there's also some hope and some optimism that if I have ability to take kids at Goffstown High School without increasing our operational costs, and I can bring down the per pupil cost, I'm not opposed to that at all.
Okay, let's not go, that's
Just
fine, but
briefly,
let's not go too far down
I
this
appreciate your
rabbit hole.
optimism. It's a priority of ours to get it done this year, so it probably will happen this year.
We know and we understand that, and that's why we're fully expecting this to be something that next year we're figuring out.
Okay, well, let's not spend time on hypotheticals at this point. Any other questions for Brian before we move on to Doug? Okay,
Mr. Todd?
All right, so revenues, so it's a little bit early to project revenues, but we are starting to kind of put them together by typical revenue sources. So in the packet, it's on page 100 and 101. During the presentation, I'm just going to kind of hit on the main points of it, but even within the packet on page 100 and 101, those numbers will be adjusted as we kind of go throughout this year and we get a little bit more information. So a main source of revenue we saw is our tuition, mainly that goes to New Boston. So this year, there'll be kind of two different ways that we're going to kind of project revenue for tuition. One is kind of based on our proposed budget, and then the second one will be if we're able to get a deal with the teachers and have a teacher contract be part of the warrant article. Well, that will bump up costs at the middle school and high school as well as within the district. So that will bring in additional revenue from New Boston as well. So you'll see, hopefully, two different numbers on New Boston revenue by the time this budget is voted on. Adequacy aid, which comes from the state. So about a year or two ago, they decided to do a flat 2% increase per year. Before that, sometimes there was an increase, sometimes there wasn't, and it would be kind of decided on every 2 years. So now we can kind of plan for it a little bit more. So those numbers up there are based on 2% higher than what we're currently receiving for fiscal year 26. We should have an early estimate of what the state is projecting sometime in mid-November for that. So again, we'll have a little bit more clarity on adequacy aid for the following year in mid-November. Special education aid, so a good thing, they passed a state law which now requires 80% reimbursement. So this is when a student costs 3.5 times higher than the state average. So if the state average is $21,500, that would mean that a student's cost would have to be above $75,000. At that point, we start getting 80% reimbursement until the cost is above 10 times, and then we get 100% reimbursement. So what had been happening is instead of getting that full reimbursement, it was being prorated. The state had a bucket of money, and then all the towns put in their actual costs, and that bucket of money did not cover it. So then every town just got a prorated form. So last year, we got prorated to 66%, just like every other town. So if it was 80% last year, that would have been an additional $100,000 of revenue. So again, that's a good thing. So next slide, please. So a little bit more information on MST. I'll go quickly through some of the slides. But again, historically, we get a bill that shows that our share is 25% of that tuition, and therefore the remaining part is 75% for the state. So again, the state has a certain amount that they have for all schools. They first pay out transportation costs that are involved with CTE, and then they prorate the rest of the tuition reimbursements. We've had an increase that has kind of leveled off in that somewhere around 100 students, but we're not the only district that has an increase. And again, this is a good thing. We do need more tradespeople in New Hampshire. It's a great avenue for a lot of our students to go into. They can come out with an LNA degree, which is a great way to kind of, for a student like that, they can come out and be very hireable, as a mechanic. So there's a lot of ways that they can come out with something tangible that they can do. So other school districts have seen an increase in that as well. So that's led to that pool of money becoming less or more and more prorated. And that is, as far as we know, there is no change to the state funding, therefore that shortfall is expected to continue. So if we look at the next slide, so this is an actual bill. So we receive this invoice twice a year. And you can see what's circled is the tuition charge, and I know it might be a little bit small, but tuition charge is about $3,591. So that's for typical classes. Some classes, like cosmetology, are a little bit more than that, or kind of double classes are more than that. Then you can see a little bit over there, the district charge. That district charge that we get presented is at $897, or 1/4 of the total amount. So this is why, when we talked about it being a surprise, this is why it's a surprise, because you can clearly see that we know that the charge that we are being asked to pay. And this just goes by student, row by row. So if we go to the next slide, so then we received a final tuition bill, which we don't typically receive, and that's because you can, if you kind of follow it down, they have the exact count now and the rate, and so now they have the total, and then they start deducting out money. So we had our first semester payment, which we paid, our second semester payment, which we paid, and we thought we were done. Then the state paid their amount, which instead of 75% was 43%, so there's a remainder that is still due to Manchester. That is now picked up by the local school district, in that case us, and that was at $217,000. So that's why we're projecting, if it was $217,000 then, and with not only the tuition rates going up per year, but also possibly more students going in, that, you know, we're going to quickly bump to maybe 230, 240, 250, or even more. So 250 could be lower than if we continue to have like 105 students go next year. But we wanted to get ourselves better in the ballpark of what it might be. So if we go to the next slide. So this is GAP, the Goffstown Adult Education Program, which welcomes in community members, as well as, if we look at a little bit further down, we can see that 142 students took part in GAP education. So sometimes we might think of GAP education as, you know, maybe 20 or 30 people are running through the programs. 142 students took part in the GAP education, 30 total GAP diplomas were earned, and 3 students completed their HiSET or high school equivalency test. So a lot of students were helped by this. Sometimes it's that kind of a lot of classes which will get them to their GAP diploma. Sometimes it's just a student who had a rough semester and they needed to take 1 or 2 classes over again. They can take that in multiple ways. They can take it at night, or they can take it through a program called Edmentum, which is online. And we, you know, while we have our GAP core kind of at night or in the evening, math and English, Edmentum has a lot more classes that students can work their way through as well. So another success for GAP is that, you know, every student learns differently, and so when the GAP evening classes are going on, there's a little less students. It's meant to be more hands-on, more geared towards the students' interests. We're trying to find just multiple ways to have students be successful as they're young adults and as they move into adulthood. It's great for them, it's great for the community, it's definitely just a win-win. So it's definitely a program that we want to continue. You can see that in fiscal year 25, we had about 61,000 in GAP grants. And then the program got eliminated, but then there was a one-time seed grant that we now have funding for about $23,441,000 this year. So we reduced some of the GAP offerings, but we kept what we called GAP Core this year, knowing the importance that it is involved for our community, but also our community being our students here, but also the greater community as well. So next year, we do expect to have less than 1,000 students for that. So that's why you see a larger difference in the amount that we need to raise for next year. Again, we are including kind of the GAP core for next year, but we have also included welding, art class, and wood engineering. So to kind of bump it back up a little bit, knowing that it's a place to start, as we kind of presented it to the school board and now the budget committee, not knowing where the final number is at this point, but kind of bumping it up a little bit from what we call the core of GAP.
So I have a question about that. So does a community member pay to take those classes?
So there is a small fee per class. We try to make it, I think it's either $75 or $150, depending on the length of the class. We try to make it manageable, you know, because again, if it's people in the community or if our own students are able to succeed in that class, it really does set them up differently for their life as they're graduating or earning skills.
Do students pay that fee?
Students pay a fee for, yes.
Okay. Not sure how I feel about that one. Okay.
Well, we liked it a whole lot better when we got 61 grand from the state.
Elizabeth?
Okay. Question? Oh, yeah.
Yes, thank you. On MST, going back a slide, I noticed that you're getting a transportation charge. Are you getting charged for that for every single student that goes to MST?
So we, along with what used to be 75% of the funding for the classes, we receive money from the state for transportation because we send the students over as much as we can over with buses. We can't always provide busing for everybody because busing is still slightly a challenge during the day. So we do receive about $25,000 from the state in a different pool of money that has to do with transportation to reimburse us some transportation costs.
Okay, so you get that as a revenue for every student?
We get that as a revenue. And the students who we cannot provide transportation to and who they have to provide transportation for themselves, they do get a small amount of money as well for that, so.
Thank you.
All right, so if we go to the next slide, please. So this continues kind of use of grants. Superintendent talked about kind of IDEA before. So again, the idea of kind of the special ed grants or the Fund 22 is that you only spend the amount of money that you're appropriated to spend. So while we say, we have a budget there of 1.3 million, we might end up with 1.2 million in grants. Well, that means we can only spend 1.2 million in grants. None of that, though, is impacted by the tax dollars coming in or out type of thing. It's its own separate fund where, again, we qualify for a certain amount, and that's the amount that we can spend. But since we are gross appropriating, we're kind of combining all the funds into that one number at the top as far as this is the amount of money that you can spend per year. That is part of that pool as well.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that for all the poo-pooing we're doing on the state, those 2021 grants in 2021, a lot of those were state grants for school safety, right?
Yeah, so
that's the second part.
The
I just
next
wanna
thing
make
is
sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
we
in
point out
fact,
that-
if I may, I'm quick to give kudos where they're deserved. So we have been very successful. We've gotten over $1 million in safety-related grants. The state has been very good about making grants available to make our schools more safe. So in fact, there's another round of SAFE grants that is supposed to be opening at the beginning of December. We're already ready to apply for those again. We're eligible up to $100,000 per school in this next round. So this is an area that I would extend my appreciation to the state, that they prioritize school safety, and there has been money available. So that is all state money. I think some of it, they might have used federal COVID money during some of those years, but we are very appreciative of those state grants for school safety.
They do have a strong impact on our school and our response to any event if that should happen, which is appreciated. So next slide, please. So here is a little bit of our history of the Capital Reserve Fund. So as we saw on Tuesday, this is more the bottom of the sheet. On Tuesdays, the sheet kind of was a little bit longer, going back a little bit further, but to make it readable for people here and people at home, I cut it off a little bit with more of the recent. So you can see that currently we're expecting to have a balance of $228,318. Of that, we're holding $100,000 for the replacement of the turf, and so we've been putting in about $50,000 per year. So in looking at one of the Budget Committee's questions from last night, so the turf lasts about 10 to 15 years, depending on how well you maintain it. And what the company is saying is that we are, so far, 2 years in, we've done a great job of maintaining it. Not that they can predict out that will last more than 10 years, but we're heading in a better direction than if we weren't maintaining it well. They weren't too quick to give us an estimate, knowing that it was about 8 to 10 or 12 years out from now what that turf replacement would cost. But the last time that they got a number, it was actually closer to 600,000 and not that million. So I don't think it's going to be the 600,000. It's definitely going to be higher because, like anything, the costs are going to go up. but we weren't able, at least within a couple of days, to get them to kind of give us a
Right.
ballpark at all about what the cost would be. But we'll continue to kind of chip away at 50,000 a year unless we think there's a need to kind of bump that up. And if we go on to the next slide, we can see as of right now, we are looking at asking for a warrant article in the amount of 300,000 for another deposit. We have multiple identified projects. If we added up all those identified projects, it would be over that 300,000. It would be over that 300,000 plus what we have currently in our fund. But the idea is to chip away. So we have projects which are worthwhile. We have projects that we can get done. A lot of times we do the projects in the summertime. And so, you know, as we get closer, we'll kind of narrow it down a little bit more as far as what would happen if we were able to kind of get a successful warrant article of 300,000. So we'd be ready to go for the summer as well. Last year, a lot of the money went to the middle school cistern project. You know, that one couple great words we got to say is on time, on budget. You know, that is a tricky project where, you know, the school was kind of shut down to some degree because the sprinkler line was down. There was no water, you know, in case of fire type of thing. So to have that be on time was key. And like anything now with any projects now, if you have a project on budget, that is more than a win. So a lot of that has to do with our director of facilities, who was, you know, kind of just checking in a lot, and it also has to do with, you know, the companies that they choose to use, EMC, which has been great working with a lot of school districts in the state as well as within the state of Maine. So I don't know if there's any questions on CRF or, because
Just briefly, are we guaranteed the turf field, like, is the company that we paid to install it, do they guarantee it a certain amount of years? And how many years is that? I'm just curious.
Well, so we typically, I think we're looking at like a 10 to 15-year life expectancy. So I think the warranty was for like 10 years, but I think that a lot of them last longer than that.
Okay, so if it does fail before the 10 years?
Oh, yeah.
We have
That would be-
security with it?
Yes.
Do they cover maintenance of it, or is that our responsibility?
Maintenance is our responsibility.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, Brian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For this slide, is there an associated slide with the breakdown of the costs per project?
that, I had the breakdown on the orientation on Tuesday night, but I don't think I remembered to send out in the email that you didn't get quite yet.
Okay.
That PowerPoint presentation, which I can forward along as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Should we keep going?
So we are now switching up to our
So
next speaker.
why
Sure.
don't we take a few-minute break, a true 5-minute break, okay? 5 minutes and everybody's back here by 7:45.
No.
Okay. All right, we're gonna finish up with Wendy. Oh, not finish up this part of the presentation with Wendy.
Just a few more slides. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Wendy Kohler. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Schools. Right now, all of our buildings are working on getting our assessment data put together from last year. But I wanted to take an opportunity just to share a few items with you, things that we're proud of, because as we're talking about budgets, it's really important for our taxpayers and people hopefully watching at home to know about their return on investment. So one of the things I'll mention is on our website, we do put our achievement data out there for people to be able to look at. Right now, our 23-24 data is on there, and in November, our schools will be presenting to CNE, which is a subcommittee of the school board, and we'll have our new data to be able to put on the website. So more to come, but I wanted you to know that it is front-facing for the community. Stephen? A few things that I did want to share, and I know it's hard to see from where you are, but what you're looking at right now is achievement data from last year's New Hampshire State Assessment for Bartlett Elementary School. The first, if you're looking at the bar graph on the left, the maroon column is the scores of proficiency that Bartlett students in grade 3 scored during the 23-24 school year. When you look at the bar graph next to it in blue, those are last year's scores, and the green bar is against the state. So on the left-hand side, you're seeing the scores for 3rd grade, and on the right-hand side, you're seeing scores for 4th grade in the area of English language arts. So you can see last year in both grades, we had significant increase in proficiency, which means students scored either a 3 or a 4 on their New Hampshire SAS last year at Bartlett. Next slide, Stephen. And again, sticking with Bartlett, just looking at our achievement in the area of mathematics, again, the bar chart on the left is for 3rd grade, on the right is 4th grade. Again, that maroon bar is the test scores from 23-24. The blue one is last year's test scores, and the green one is the state average. So again, significant uptick in scores over at Bartlett Elementary School. So I would like to publicly just give a huge kudos to the teachers and the administrators over at Bartlett. They were very focused on teaching and learning. Last year, we've had a significant uptick.
Wendy, I really appreciate this data, and I'd like to see, so all of this on the website though, as well, like the other school data?
So what will happen, yes, so great question, Joe. So right now, I'm just showing a little bit of tidbits, but in November, after we present at CNE, the board will see all of the data, and then it will all be front-facing for the community.
Perfect, I appreciate it. I guess my question is, it's good to see the improvement, but we're also seeing that 50% of students are not proficient in math. So what extra steps are we doing to make sure that we're getting closer to the 100%? Knowing that we're probably never going to get there, but what extra is the district doing?
That's a great question. So we're really focusing on Tier 1 instruction. So making sure that our students who are in front of teachers are getting the best instruction possible. So things like mentoring all of our new teachers, which I know we talked about earlier with when we're getting new hires in, getting our excellent veteran teachers on board, working with those teachers that are brand new to the district, making sure they not only understand the curriculum, but what our expectations are of good teaching and learning in the district. We also have a really rigorous new teacher induction program that we do in August. All of our new staff are with us for about a week and a half so that they know exactly, again, what our expectations are of what good teaching and learning looks like. What we don't want to have happen is for teachers to be there on the first day of school and not have their computer set up, not understand our learning management system, not have seen our curriculum resources before. These are all things that we've really beefed up over the last couple of years. We've also been working on our intervention strategies that we're using with some of our students who are perhaps falling a little bit behind. So what does that intervention look like? In some cases, we're pushing into classrooms and doing small group work with our interventionists, our Title I teachers, our special ed teachers. In other areas, we're pulling out to really give some supplemental work in areas where we're seeing deficiencies. I'd also mention that we're really looking at our data this year more than ever. So looking at where are our students, not only where they're falling in proficiency, but what area. So for example, in mathematics, we get that proficiency number, but you can dig down and say, okay, is this a fluency issue that we really need to work on with that student? And make sure that our teachers are informed about what are areas that those students really need, and not just teaching to the whole, but making sure they understand the learners that are in front of them. So that's a few things, Joe.
Thank you.
Yep, happy to.
Do you get that information from the state testing or from the NEWA testing?
So a little bit of both. So you can do a little bit of drilling down with the state testing, but we really drill down with our NWEA testing to be able to get more specifics. We also have a diagnostic that we use here in Goffstown called IXL, which we use in both mathematics and language arts. That is an ongoing assessment where teachers are able to get data from that to inform their instruction. So multiple data points, not just one. As you know, when we take our New Hampshire State Assessment, that's a one data point in time. And we're really looking at multiple data points when we're looking to inform our instruction and not just our SAS data. Our SAS data is important though, because that's our front-facing data that we're compared with the state. But our NEWA does give us national norms and things like that that we look at as well.
I had one other question about the chart. I just want to
Sure.
make sure I'm reading it correctly. So
Sure.
that the red column on the far left, that's the third grade, right?
Yep, the three on the far left are third grade. The first column was their proficiency score in 23, 24.
Right.
So that first column, I can tell you, is at 39% proficiency. The
So-
next column is last year, and we were up to 57% proficiency. And the green one next to it was last year's state score of 52%.
So the red column on the far left, those are
Yep.
the same kids that are the blue column in the group on the right. Like, they're literally the same kids, right?
They're not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
from
'cause
grade
the
3 to
third
grade
graders were
4.
four.
Yeah, sorry, yes. I thought you were talking about the blue part.
Yeah, so the
Correct.
same kids, so this isn't just, population difference or whatever
No.
else. Those are the exact same kids
Correct.
who have shown that level
That
of
much
improvement.
growth. Yes.
Okay.
Yep, significant growth. Okay, next slide, Stephen. Some other achievements, looking at the other end of the spectrum, looking at Goffstown High School, our AP, which is our Advanced Placement Program, we administered 398 exams last year with an average score of 3.8, which is an 88% pass rate. For our AP recognitions, we had 22 AP scholars, 12 AP scholars with honors, and 42 AP scholars with distinction, which is pretty remarkable. We also continue to score very well on our SATs. For example, in the area of evidence-based reading and writing, 77% of our students met that 50th percentile, which is the benchmark for the SAT. We also had a semifinalist for the National Merit Scholarship Program, which means that a student was in the top 16,000 nationally. And we also had 3 commended students that were in the top 50,000 nationally. Next slide. Continuing with Goffstown High School, other recognitions and achievements, we had 16 students who were chosen last year for the All-State Music Selection, 11 for the Scholastic Art Awards, 19 students who received the New Hampshire Seal of Biliteracy. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it acknowledges students who demonstrated proficiency in English in one other language or more. For also some competitions, we were first place in the New Hampshire Envirothon, which is a hands-on problem-solving competition that's on New Hampshire Ecology. First place in the first robotics pine tree competition, and we also had one of our math teachers, Jason Shea, who is the Krista McAuliffe Sabbatical Award winner, which is pretty awesome. Stephen? Just to think about our co-curriculars, clubs, and athletics. So this is as much part of who we are as our academics, because these work on some of those soft skills, our Portrait of a Graduate, which involves problem solving, leadership, communication skills, and we have a number of students at all 3 of our levels that are participating in co-curricular clubs and athletics. At the elementary level last year, we had students involved in photography, student council, strings. Last year was the first year that we offered our strings program after school at Bartlett. We saw a significant uptick in the amount of students that participated, which was fantastic. At Mountain View, we have 15 athletic teams and 13 clubs offered, and our boys A basketball team won the Division I state championship last year. We had 473 students that were involved in our music ensembles, and at the high school, we have 36 clubs and co-curriculars with over 375 of our students who are involved in those. Some of them are involved in more than one, plus we have athletics. Our boys tennis team were state champions last year, as well as our wrestling team. So all things that we're really proud of. And at this time, if you don't have any questions, we're going to move on to the district budget overview.
Okay, I think we
Thank
can
you.
go.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Wendy.
All right, so the district budget, so again, this is part of the general fund or Fund 10. So this part has to do with taxation. And so as we look at the district budget, we'll look at the school budgets, part of the school budgets maybe tonight, and the remainder of the school budgets at our next meeting. So what is in the district part of the budget? That's are things like special ed transportation, some information technology or IT, substitute teachers, out-of-district placements, retirement stipends, and, things like paying the town of Goffstown for services, cost sharing of GTV and parks and rec support. So there's multiple other things as well, but these are some of the higher, or just some options as far as what is there. So next slide, please. So our current budget is $12,990,067 for the district budget. The base or the default for fiscal year 27 is $12,899,831, and a new amount of $304,171. So this brings the fiscal year 27 requested up to $13,204,002, which is an increase from fiscal year 26 of $213,935. So you can see there's some ups and there's some downs. So as we go through the next slides, we'll definitely see what went up and some of the things that went down as well. So next slide, please. So this slide, we're kind of highlighting the 1100 functions or regular education functions, and you can see that we have two reductions. So one is district retirement stipends. So these are teachers who put in for retirement, and then we calculate what is due to them upon retirement, and then they can either retire at the end of the year or they don't retire at the end of the year. That's why sometimes we have this money that rolls into our fund balance as well. So compared to what teachers put in for last year for retirement, this was a reduction of $21,500. And then this kind of flows into the teacher retirement to New Hampshire retirement system. Less money is being paid out, so less money is going into the retirement system, so a reduction of $8,344. So if we move to the next slide, now we are in 1200 or special education. So tuition for out-of-district students. So this is with kind of expected placements, kind of where students are now, and then a 5% cost increase, which has been approved by the New Hampshire Education Department. So again, this would be part of the default budget because these are all tied to IEPs or individualized education plans, which are protected under IDEA. So with this, though, we see a reduction of $412,839. Next thing we see is professional services for special ed. Again, we see a reduction of $43,000. So each of these lines, as we kind of go through, at a different point, or if you guys have questions about what they really stand for, as we kind of go line by line in the budget, we can do that as well, too. I think we have a question so far.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
No problem. So I'm looking specifically at the 412,000 reduction. Does that have to do with students no longer living in the district that don't use the out-of-district placement services, or have they taken advantage of like an EFA or something like that have put them in a different district? I guess I'm wondering how it went, because that's a pretty significant reduction, right? Like,
it is a
from year to year.
significant reduction.
Yeah, Jennifer Freitas, who's our special ed director, is here. She could maybe get into a little more detail. This just shows the volatility of special education. So we're talking about very cost-intensive students, and students age out, students move, student circumstances might change. I can't say, Joe, that we've had students that were in these particular lines that became EFA students, but sometimes kids' circumstances change, kids age out, kids graduate, that's why that number goes down. And really, this is just highlights the volatility of special education. In a large district like Goffstown, we're able to kind of absorb some of the ebbs and flows, but smaller districts like in New Boston, we have a capital reserve fund dedicated just for special education if we had significant unexpected costs.
Thank you.
And lastly, on here, you can see a reduction of 10,000 that was made by the school board. They were looking at historical numbers and reduced it due to multiple years being less than where the budget was at that point. So, next slide, please. So now we're between different function lines here as we kind of group them. So while special ed out-of-district placement went down, you can see that transportation went up. So again, it depends on who the students are and where they're going. So while there's a cap of 5% on the cost for the schools, there's not always that same cap on transportation. And so our hope, though, is that we would not be at this total amount. This total amount is sometimes for students kind of having their own transportation, but our goal is always to kind of do ride shares, cost shares with either our own students going to the same place or close places, or with a surrounding town going to the same place as well. But where we stand now as we look into next year, there is that increase right there. The next one we talked about, this is that EMC lease where we are bumping up to the amount that we need to pay now yearly for, 16 more years on that lease. Then we can see the SAU services. So this is again Goffstown's share of what is projected to be the SAU cost. This has not been voted on by the SAU Joint Board at this point yet. So that is a projection, but not a full known right now. And then we can see that we are also going up in regular education transportation. So that's going up roughly about 5% per year. That's part of a new contract. Regular transportation has gone up in pretty much every district, again, as they try to compete with long-haul truckers. It's the same type of license that our drivers have to have if they're driving the larger buses. So as other costs have gone up in private industries in order to attract bus drivers, those bus drivers' wages have had to kind of go up as well. Because if not, we had what happened kind of during that COVID and after COVID time where there was a shortage of bus drivers. So since then, they've bumped up the pay. They've been able to retain more people. We've been able to kind of have more steady routes as well as some transportation in a consistent manner for our sports team. So again, this isn't just a Goffstown thing, seeing a higher transportation cost for both regular ed and special ed. This is a statewide school type of thing and probably more nationally as well. So, next slide, please.
Oh, Joe.
Joe?
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I'm sorry, I'm
Can
spacing.
Can you tell me the percentage expended from the transportation line last year? Approximately, when you have it. I know you're presenting, so when you have it,
Yeah,
that'd be great.
so, let me just make a note of that. Okay.
I'd ask you, and follow up kind of, not, on that same transportation line, is it possible to break out how much is for regular school transportation and how much is for athletics?
So athletics is a different line, so we'll see that later.
Okay,
So,
so that's all
That's
regular
all pick up and
transportation?
drop off for kids for going to school
Yeah.
or
Okay.
from school.
yeah, and it's for the couple of the late buses that we have as well.
Okay,
Yeah, when we do the individual school budgets, you'll see athletic transportation at the middle school and the high school.
okay.
All right, so on here, we can see summer school teacher salary. So again, this is the school board looking at historics and reducing that by 5,000. We have the treasurer stipend, which is 2,000. Again, we're going to be always transparent about where we want to be with that, and we've talked about that before. And then we can see summer help. So that has historically been underfunded. School board brought it up by 15,000. Again, this is a great thing. A lot of times, for 181 days, our schools are packed. They are, as the superintendent said, the most expensive buildings in the town that the town owns. So we want to keep them up. And we have a great opportunity to do that in the summer. We can bring in, college kids, older high school kids. So the labor cost isn't that high. We're not necessarily paying benefits on that, but we're getting a lot of bang for our buck as they go through and they do upkeep of the building, which also allows more of our professional custodials to kind of take part in things which you wouldn't have a summer help person do. So it definitely keeps the buildings looking better than sometimes their ages would have them look. So it's money well spent and something that we've been able to use in a positive way. So, next slide, please. So we can see a bump up in IT salaries. So that's kind of been a focus as we look at the teacher salaries. It's easy to compare those across the state because the state does have several reports that you can go onto the webpage for, and you can kind of see multiple data provided by every district in the state, which is a great thing. So those are kind of easy to kind of see where our teachers lie as far as like, do they need to be bumped up or are they in a good spot? So IT is a little bit different because they're not necessarily so easily spelled out. But as we looked into where the IT salaries were, we saw that not only were they much lower than they would be if they were in the private industry, but also lower than a lot of the towns were paying as well. So we really needed to bump the salaries up in order to retain the staff. A lot of times when you have IT staff, they're learning things, every day, every month, and they're learning while they're here. So it's better that we can kind of retain people who we've kind of invested in and then also are better knowledgeable about what we have in our district. So it was important to retain that staff, and so there's been some bump ups in their salaries for those reasons. Then we see district IT professional services. So a lot of that is it's an additional $7,500 for a security audit. So this is something which is state mandated. And again, if we think about like all the student users, all the adult users, what our infrastructure kind of holds as far as information, we would want to make sure that it is being audited to make sure that we are going about things the right way and how we protect things. So this is a good mandate to have, just because how much information is in there. And it's something that we always want to kind of keep chipping away at, making sure that we have best practices in place, and we're bringing in outside companies to kind of challenge us and can kind of continue our best practices as well. The next thing you can see on there is the district non-capital software. So that has been increased as well. So part of that is for professional support, whether that be with VMware or kind of our virtual machines kind of on the cloud, or for our ticketing system. So a lot of that has to do with the support for that. And then you can see that we have non-capital software. Discovery Education, which is a big part of that 20,000, is no longer state funded. So that has been state funded for years. This is the last year that it will be state funded. It's something that we believe is important to keep for our students, and so that is then taking over that funding for that. And then you can see 18,000 increase for IT maintenance. Again, part of the focus of this budget is more to kind of match some certain IT needs with the actuals. So instead of kind of overspending, it's bumping up some of their budgets to what is important to have when you have so many users, whether that be student users or adult users of IT equipment throughout each day.
Peter has a question?
I'm thinking about that program 16-113, so the IT salaries. Is it, just a dumb question, is there a reason it's called tech ed in here and then we're saying IT up there? Like, is there a difference in terms of how we're identifying that?
No, yeah, so good question. So program 16, as we look at the code, we can see it's 10-00-2290-16. So that 16 is identified as technical education on the program. It's probably more of just a me thing too, that, when I think of technical education, it's really the information technology, the IT of our district. So it's not so much technical education always of the student as it is of the IT of the district.
That is salaries for our IT department, right?
Yes, our IT department.
How many roles are we talking about there? Do you know?
In Goffstown, there are, I believe, 10 positions.
So for the microphone people, 10 people within Goffstown.
And were those increases spread across all 10 relatively evenly, do we think?
They were spread across all 10, but not necessarily relatively evenly, because again, we looked at the skills that they needed for their job
Yeah.
and what those skills are being paid in both the private industry as well as in other school districts.
So based
we
specifically
really-
off of that compared to, okay.
Doug, just so I can share, on it, so we do get the state average data from the other districts of, what different positions get paid, so we get the range. We try to get towards the 50% or so, the middle of the range.
Yeah.
A lot of our IT staff were in the very bottom of that range, and training a new IT person takes a year, so it's much easier to retain people than for me to start someone from scratch, knowing it takes 12 months for me to get them up to speed.
I don't know if we need to repeat that for the microphones.
He said it pretty loud, I guess. Well, there'll be minutes. Doug?
Yeah, question. I'm sorry, was that, so 10 people, was that 10 full-time staff for IT for that?
Is it full-time staff?
They are full-time. Most of them are calendar year. There are some that are extended school year.
Okay.
It depends on the position, depends on whether they're 210 days or the full calendar.
And I think a key piece of information, which I'll repeat in case people didn't hear, it was to bump them from like the 30th, 35th percentile of pay to around the 50th percentile of pay.
Thank you.
Next slide, I don't know if that's,
Yeah, that moves us into food service.
Yeah.
So I'm going to introduce Megan Bizzaro, who's our food services director. Meg?
so we're now coming out of Fund 10 and we're going into a different fund, which is self-sustaining, being food service.
Good evening, folks. Nice to see you all. As you heard Brian and Doug mention, we are an enterprise fund, so we are self-sustaining. So when the taxpayers vote on the budget, while our number is included, none of the local tax dollars go into our fund. And I believe there is language on the warrant article that delineates that as well to help the voters to see that clearly. So we'll get started. Steve, please. So currently, our budget is $1,400,062,716, and we are requesting $1,500,717. No, wait a minute. No, sorry. Wrong. Sorry about that.
That's
I
okay.
need
We
new
can
glasses.
read the numbers.
1.5. We're asking for 1.5 with an increase of approximately $85,000. And we'll go over what those increases are, but they are primarily labor, as this is the fourth year of the CBA, and the fourth year had some voter-approved great raises for the support staff and food service as part of that union. We can go ahead. So our food service fund balance, as was alluded to before, we are allowed to keep monies. Most of this comes from the COVID times when we were able to feed all students. It was really awesome, and not have to worry about chasing people for money. And we also received federal dollars at a much higher reimbursement rate. Because, and now we are back to the traditional model where we get a sliding rate for reimbursement of, depending upon a student's eligibility for free and reduced price meals. There can be quite a bit of disparity between what we get for a student on paying full price, which we get about 40 cents for, versus a student who is eligible for free meals, and we get over $4 for. So there is quite a bit of disparity there. And nationally, they are trying to work on that, but I'm not as hopeful as I've been in the past about that. So currently, as of June $1,992 in our fund balance. And as of this past June 30th, 2025, we had a decrease to $314,722, which is a net decrease of approximately $26,000. This is mostly due to capital costs. We had multiple warmers that we had to replace. We had compressor work at the high school. So most of that net change was due to capital costs. And again, those are things that we were able to pay for without having to come to the general fund to say, hey, the dishwasher broke and it's, $40,000, can we get a new one? We're able to do that, to take care of that. So the next slide, please. As you can guess, we're just going to identify a couple of the areas that have gone up the most. Food, milk, and commodities have increased, and overall, we're anticipating approximately almost $34,099. We actually are seeing an increase in participation at our larger schools, Mountain View and the high school, which is absolutely thrilling, that the community and the students are hopping in line and realizing the value that we offer people for a great meal. And elementary schools were about the same as last year, which is definitely a plus because we did have price increases to our full-paying families, because as you know, you go to the grocery store and it's $100 before you even turn around. And we're still maintaining being able to do fresh fruits and vegetables every day, lean meats. We are getting some great pricing because we are part of a large buying group, which has about 60 school districts in the state. Our bid is worth about $7 million, plus anything off bid, so it's probably closer to $10 million. So we actually have a lot of buying power that benefits us immensely, absolutely immensely. And we can also get some products in that we might not get if it was just Goffstown. So that's pretty great. If you could go to the next slide, Steve.
I just mentioned on the food increases, if you don't mind. So that's a net increase. So what we did was we looked at last year's actuals, fiscal year 2025 actuals, and then we increased it by 5% per year, and we looked at it where that stood with the budget. So some schools actually went down slightly, and it was the middle school and the high school that really primarily brought it up, and that is due to kind of the additional participation in that. I had fun doing the budget with Megan because she loves looking at all things profit, all things expenses type of thing. So when she talks about kind of that network buying group and she has like just rows and rows of things that she can buy, she knows like the profit on those as well. So like, okay, if we serve this meal, we have this amount of profit type of thing. So how many times should we serve it per month? So there's a lot of thought that goes into not only the menu to make sure there's that nutrient value for our students, because we ask a lot of our students during the day, and we want to make sure they have the right fuel to kind of progress in the day, but also as far as what the profit is to make sure that we can still be that self-sustaining fund. So it's been great working with Megan.
Thanks, Deb. And you're also a very lucky district, town of Goffstown. I don't live here, but the staff that you have in your buildings are phenomenal. Some of the best people I've worked with, really. And I know a lot of directors across the state, and they don't get to have as much fun as I do coming to work and laugh. And, we want to try this, we want to try this. A lot of times I have to kind of catch up because I'm in the regulation land, which is getting to be a quagmire. But they're moving the needle forward. So you should be very, very proud of these folks who work in your kitchens. So in keeping with the theme, we have no new positions next year. We are not anticipating anything new. We do try to be flexible and change as we need to, because sometimes school schedules can change or enrollment changes, but at this time, we just don't anticipate any changes. Next one. And this is where our biggest increase is. Our It is approximately $43,000 increase in labor. Again, this is because of the contractual, the fourth year of the contract that the voters approved. And that's really what is driving this piece is the payroll piece, as well as some changes in health insurance, but it's really the payroll piece that is driving this number up. And I think it is. That is my, what questions can I answer for folks? Well, that was.
Anybody?
Nobody?
Okay.
Not even about a chicken nugget? Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. So, do we want to try and do Glen Lake? That'd be pretty quick, or do you want to?
Yeah, I think that would be, if you don't mind.
Okay,
Great.
so we're gonna do Glen Lake School, and then we're gonna wrap it up for the night. So.
I would go with district.
Huh?
I'd go with the district.
I can't hear you.
District.
Go with the, what do you mean?
Start on page 1.
Oh, is there more district?
Oh, are you
no,
talking
the
about
PowerPoint
presentation?
slides.
Okay.
Yeah, we have more.
I thought we were going to actually do line items tonight.
Oh,
I was all
no.
excited.
That's separate, isn't it?
Now, since we just got this information, we're gonna have some time to look it over and think about it before we start diving into the actual line items.
Great.
So if we could do Glen Lake School, that would be great.
Voting on this tonight, too?
Hello.
Principal Stoyl, hello.
I'm Kathy Stoyl. I'm the principal of Glen Lake School.
And I'm Carol Donovan, the assistant principal.
And we're happy to be here with you tonight. So we're going to go through our budget overview. Our budget for 2026 is $2,973,690. Our base for 2027, $2,951,270. New proposed expenditures in 2027, $13,741. And our requested budget, $2,965,011. And the difference is a decrease of $8,679. So each year I talk a little bit, because I know there are always new people on the budget committee, and might be new people watching at home. I talk a little bit about what makes Glen Lake School unique. And a lot of that is our rolling enrollment for preschool. So we have a responsibility through special education law to provide services for students with special needs as of their 3rd birthday. So with other grades, there's a cutoff date, and if they're 6 by September 30th, they go to 1st grade that year. You don't have to be 3 by September 30th to come to school at Glen Lake. We add you into the school if you are a student with special needs, so that you can get those services that are appropriate to address your needs. So students with special needs enter through different means. We have early supports in our area that provide services to students from birth to age 3, and some students transition to us through those programs, and then others can come through at any time through Child Find. And we also identify students who might be 4 years old, and parents or pediatrician or a daycare center, somebody is noticing that there might be a need for some supports for that student. So with all of that, as people are getting to know their little ones a little better and realizing that they might have some concerns, we add them at any time, and we don't necessarily know how many there are going to be and what the significance of their needs are. And like we've talked about a little bit, that volatility of special education, we can find out very close to a 3rd birthday that a student that we hadn't known about with very significant needs is going to be joining our school. So based upon current trends, and again, knowing that we, in a lot of ways, it's very hard to predict, we anticipate adding more than 20 identified preschoolers by June. Last year, our preschool grew by 15 students through the year, and the 2 years prior to it, it grew by 16 and by 21 respectively, so in that range. Again, there's no mechanism to forecast that number or their needs. And our preschool program, we do have typically developing peer role models whose families pay tuition for them to attend. And we try to have that be 50% of our population. And that really helps all of our students develop and grow. But with that, the students with special education needs, are there up to that 50% as well. So that accounts, when you see our statistics, I think it said we're at 40% of our student population with special needs right now. That accounts for that high percentage. Next slide, thank you. So our projected class sizes for next year, again, trying to build a little off of trends and years and things that go up and down a bit. We're projecting 90 for preschool and 130 for kindergarten. There was a typo on this slide. It should say 7 total classroom teachers teachers instead of the 8 that it says. And that uses data as we know it as of October 1st of this year. So just keeping that in mind. This shows our historical enrollment. And our totals right now, 162. It has been more. It's varied more. There's been a lot more transition in and out already this year in our programs, with people moving in. I think we used to see more of families moving in the summer and occasionally somebody moving in at another time, but we're seeing more of that at all times, and students starting the school year with us and then wherever they're moving to is ready now in October or whatever. So it's been there's been a lot of fluctuation even as we begin the year.
Joe, has a question?
Yeah, thank you, Principal Stoyle. So I see 32 less students from last year to this year. I see that you say you normally accept up to 56 role model students. Have you thought about increasing the amount of role model students accepted, provided that you do need to provide services, say a family pops up throughout the year, but have you thought about accepting more to increase revenue?
We, in our preschool program, we have, we look at what our class sizes would be if we had full enrollment and we're adding kids, and that is our goal, to accept role model students up to that number so that we're not falling behind in that as the year goes on. That said, we've been creeping back. We started having difficulty filling those role model positions. We used to have lotteries that were, so we had a lot more demand for those role model spots. After COVID, it's taken some time to creep back up to those numbers. Right now, our 3s are at the full capacity, pretty much. We might have a couple spots, but our 4s, we still have some spots available, so we're always accepting those students until.
So if I remember the space correctly, you have 4 classrooms inside. You have modular classrooms as well.
We have 4
attached. You have 4 outside, 4 inside, outside the building.
Yep.
And then you have 4 inside.
We have
so are
main
you?
classrooms,
If you're
yeah.
saying there's only 7 classroom teachers, what are you using that extra space for? Is that like a?
We took one of our classrooms this year and shifted it into a
flexible special education space because we've had more students as the years go on with more intensive needs, and we were finding that it was not as successful for them to be in larger groups of students for as much of the day. So this way they have a separate classroom where they can do the same kinds of activities in a smaller group and gain those skills to be able to apply them in the bigger group. And they spend parts of their day when they can be successful in the bigger group in those rooms. But we were able to take a space and we bumped up our class sizes a bit in preschool in order to accommodate that extra space in that room to better meet kids' needs.
I think it's great you're doing that because I remember when we toured, you were talking about how you were giving services to students in the hallway and things like that. So I'm glad that there's a space available for you to do that, and that I think it was a good decision. So thank you.
Next slide. So we currently have 68 preschool students in 6 sessions. We had 67 last year at this time, and that grew to 81. So that kind of gives you an idea of over from October how that continued to grow. And our average September class sizes of 9+ for 3-year-olds and 13+ for 4-year-olds for preschool classes that will continue to grow. And then we've got 94 kindergarten students in 8 sessions, and that is lower, and that's been, and that's also, we've seen more fluctuation this year. So, and right now our kindergarten classes are at 12 students. The one thing that's been really nice about that is that we have half-day kindergarten. So you're trying to teach, all of our curriculum is written for full-day kindergarten, and you're trying to teach all of those concepts in 2.5 hours, and then another class in the afternoon. So having a more manageable class size has been a bonus in helping a little bit with that. It doesn't make up for the other hours, but it does help a bit. So our staffing overview, and I'm going to. There was one position that I left off of this inadvertently because it is a position that we are currently trying to fill, and when I went down my list, I forgot to add it on there, but we are currently filling a registered behavior technician position, so that should be on here as well. We have 4 kindergarten teachers, 3 preschool classroom teachers who are also case managers, and then 7.9 full-time equivalent special educators and related service providers, and that includes 1.4 OTs. We share the second OT with Mountain View. We have 2 speech pathologists, speech language assistant, a kindergarten special educator, and then 2 autism support teachers / special educators, and then a half-time kindergarten interventionist. We have a .2 school counselor. He spends the rest of his time at Bartlett. He's with us 1 day a week. 20 paras, but that is, several of them are part-time, ranging from 4 mornings a week, and then we have a group of them that are with us full-time. So, so that really is, there are 20 people, but they have varying numbers of hours. We have a total of 1 nurse. This year it's split between 2 people, but we have 1 full-time coverage equivalent. And we have 2 administrative assistants, 2 administrators, and 1.5 custodians. Our noteworthy changes, communications, there's 7,000 plus increase to analog internet and dark fiber, and that was mentioned in the district overview, those increases. And IT laptop lease and rental, $5,750 increase due to additions to the laptop lease and net addition to copier lease, maintenance, toner, and print management. And there is a $2,000 reduction in special education new equipment that the school board put in looking at, we've traditionally carried some money in a line to cover because we never know who's going to be coming in and what they might need for equipment in the school environment. But my understanding of the conversation is that it's a line that often doesn't get spent, which is good news, and that we would find other ways to accommodate that expense. It would never be something that we would stop a child from having, obviously, who needs a piece of equipment, but there would be other ways to, that we would work to address that. That's it. Any questions? Yes.
Question, how's your little doggy doing?
Harold. Yeah, Harold is
Got a
doing
clean
well.
bill of health.
He did, yes, yep, he had a.
He's the
yeah.
cutest dog I've ever seen.
Thank you very much. No, he's a sweetheart, and the kids really like him, and he's been a really nice addition for a lot of the kids who at times have challenging moments, and somehow he's able to bring them right out of it and back into what they need to be doing, so that's been nice. And he is not in the budget, for the record. I cover all his expenses. But thank you for asking. I'll let him know you asked.
Any other questions? Izzy?
With the more students with intensive needs, can or do we charge insurances for any of that, or no?
There's no fluctuation to insurance that I know of based on
Medicaid,
students'
we can
needs.
bill Medicaid.
Oh, billing, oh, is that what you need
Yeah.
to?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I get, okay, I understand. Yes, we do, whenever we're able to bill for Medicaid reimbursement, we do.
Yeah.
The overall decrease was $8,679. But I noticed you only really highlighted like the 2,000. Is everything, the other 6,000?
There were a
just, like,
couple
little
of
teeny-
minor things we adjusted based on actuals, I think there might have, and then, but we also had, some teachers who left who had, a lot of experience and brought in, some, newer staff, so, I think that really accounts for the rest of it, so.
Any other questions?
And as we looked at the communication increase as well as the laptop lease increase, that's an increase that kind of more comes from myself and the IT director. So as far as like what the schools had control over, they were very conscious to kind of either keep it flat or go negative. So we needed to bring up those lines partly because laptops are more expensive. And, while we don't have a one-to-one here, we do bring in laptops, we bring in iPads to Glen Lake as well. So we bring in the right technology to get us to a decent point. And then we also wanted to, we have a new internet, dark fiber, which is what brings the internet from the high school to each of the schools. So you pay per mile fee on that, as well as our phone system. So we're going through getting a new phone system, and there's been upgrades to that, but there's also an additional cost to that as well. But our old phone system wasn't going to be supported anymore. So no matter what direction we were going to go, and it was going to be an increase at that point. Is that correct?
The old phone system was end of life, end of support, and discontinued by the manufacturer, and was exposed to the internet, which was a big bullseye to get hacked. So
Okay.
we did make the conscious decision, and we went out to bid a year ago to look at options, and we replaced our phone system at that point to address all of those issues. But when you move from a system that you own to a system that becomes a pay per month per line, because nobody sells a system that you can buy and own outright anymore, there's recurring costs.
Okay. Anybody else? You all finished? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that's all the business we're going to deal with tonight. We will do all the other schools next Tuesday. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Can I have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Who seconded?
Several of us did.
Several of us.
Oh, I have to write it down.
Pick a name.
All right, I'm gonna pick Brian.
Pick Laura.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.